And good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nicholas Whitaker. I am the Media Outreach Manager at the News Lab at Google. You can find more about our team and what we work on at g.co/newslab. Today, I have a guest, Richard Gingras, who's going to be here to talk a little bit about AMP, Accelerated Mobile Pages. This is a continuation of last Friday's Hangout, which unfortunately, due to technical issues, we had to terminate halfway through. We'll be picking up right where we left off. So just really briefly, I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of what we covered in that session. Richard talked in detail about AMP specifically, talked a little bit about the constraints of the ecosystem that we're working in within today, mentioned a little bit about the suboptimal ad behaviors, time of loading, things like jankiness of loading of ads, talked a little bit about the ad blockers that are becoming a bigger issue, especially in places like Germany. We talked a little bit about how the ecosystem is currently leaving publishers and publishing itself exposed to proprietary environments, and how that's not an ideal situation moving forward, and how we really need to have more of an open and easy to access web. And then he ended, right before we got cut off, with this quote. He said, how do we take, given these issues and the other problems that are occurring right now in the industry, how do we create compelling experiences for consumers around the world so that they can take full advantage of the products that publishers offer? And how do we do that in a way that publishers stay in control of their products and of their destinies? And how do we do this in a way that is open and really stays true to the promises of the internet? And with that, Richard, if you have anything else you'd like to add to that, a little bit of a quote, we can then jump right back into the questions that were asked yesterday.
No, let's go right to the questions.
Okay, great. So kicking it off, how does AMP fit with publishers' product portfolios? For example, with The Guardian, and this question is actually coming from Stephen at The Guardian. At The Guardian, we have a responsive site, which is very fast on mobile and mobile apps that many users select as their viewer for all of the content, including Google search results. How does the AMP user experience differentiate itself from all of that?
Well, of course, AMP is primarily about speed, and of course, creating more comfortable user experiences across the board, including making sure that we have an ad experience that people are willing to live with as well. As we've architected this, again, collaboratively with the publishers and other partners, we thought it was useful to architect it in such a fashion that, in a sense, publishers can take and begin to work with AMP and go deeper as they feel appropriate. Certainly the first and most obvious use case is how does a publisher most easily make their content available at speed for use on other platforms like Google Search or Google News, or for that matter, third-party social networks as well. And so with AMP, they can take and easily create these companion AMP files for each article page that are available for that purpose, such that, again, their content can be fast on search or on Google News, or fast on any social network, including Facebook, where articles are shared via the AMP format. I think over time, what I expect we will see, and I already know some publishers who are looking at this, of how do they incorporate AMP more deeply into their product experiences across the board? Does the AMP format become the primary format for their displaying articles even within their native apps? Since we support material and responsive design approaches, does AMP eventually become the website? That will be up to individual publishers as we move along. But again, this is basic web technology, and can be used as fully and richly as publishers would see fit.
Another question from Stephen. He said, innovation is what keeps the web healthy. AMP is referred to as open, yet Google is the publisher and gatekeeper of all of AMP's code. A JavaScript developer would struggle to do anything in AMP that doesn't immediately invalidate it with Google. How does Google plan to keep developers on board under those conditions?
So I think that's a very, very important point. Look, the reason that we structured it as an open source project was because it was so important to us to architect it in such a way that we could take full advantage of all of the creative endeavors out there to really help continue to evolve AMP and make it as powerful as it can be. So yes, we've obviously taken the first step and have developed most of the code for AMP. but not all of the code. There have been lots of contributions from third parties, and there will continue to be. And that's why we want more and more people to engage with the effort, such that we can make sure to continue not only to evolve the thinking, but evolve the code as well. And as far as approaches to more sophisticated functionality, we've already built in, as it were, escape hatches, the click-to-play function within the format that allows publishers and developers to go deep into JavaScript functionality for certain features within their experiences, but to do so as it were appropriate to when the user actually wants to engage with that kind of experience. But bottom line, again, we want AMP to be a powerful format for any kind of content experience, whether it be an article or an interactive data visualization. And we certainly want to make sure that we operate the open source effort in such a way that we get full engagement by the community and many rich contributions in terms of where we can take the format going forward.
Very good. Very good. Another question. Cache content from its URL. This off-platform behavior is very radical how we reason about our content. What will the impact of this be to publishers' business models? What people are asking.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question? It was a little bit garbled, Nick.
Yeah, sure. The AMP cache decouples content from its canonical URL. This off-platform behavior is very radical. Is a very radical change to how we reason about our content. What will be the impact of this to publishers' business models?
We think the whole approach to caching should have very little impact, because we architected the caching in this case to be very, very responsive and immediate in terms of its relationship to the core canonical document that the publisher has served. So, the purpose, we want to use the caching for its purpose, which is to, again, create a very, very fast experience for users. So to the extent the content can be cached by Google and others, that will help make the experience even faster. But the architecture of the caching is such that if the publisher needed to or wanted to make a change in a document that was in our cache, then with the one behind caching model, we'll have that update within the cache within seconds, and not likely will there be more than one or two people between the old document and the new in terms of coverage. So it's very responsive, and the whole idea was to, again, allow the document under the publisher's control to both maintain its integrity, yet leverage the optimization and caching ability that companies like Google do have that can be leveraged by everyone out there.
And we have two other questions. Who was also it seems like for large news with mute your microphone. There we go. It seems like AMP is better suited for large news outlets with a national or international audience. How can smaller outlets with regional, local audiences that aren't The Guardian or the New York Times leverage AMP, especially if they don't have IT and web development staffs?
Well, that's an interesting comment. I should point out that it was our objective with this effort, and certainly a big focus of my own with this effort, was really to make sure that as the ecosystem evolved, that it was as open as possible for all players, large and small. AMP is determinedly not simply about large publishers or for large publishers. That's not the objective. In fact, it's really the reverse. As we saw the ecosystem evolving with proprietary platforms evolving, to us, that made it increasingly less likelihood that small publishers would really be able to richly play in the ecosystem. As you would expect, if there are many different proprietary formats and demands on the part of proprietary platforms, it all becomes more difficult and more complex. The idea with AMP was a singular approach to high-performance content that could be easily adopted by publishers large, small, and in between. We've worked very closely technology companies in the ecosystem, the likes of WordPress and other CMS operators, to be ready with the capability to support AMP in their environments. So frankly, if you're a small publisher on WordPress today, implementing AMP should be very, very easy for you.
Another question. Oh, I got you. Just remember to unmute before you talk. Another question from Scotty said, believe it or not, there's still a lot of reliance on print by traditional publishers, and they all tell you that they make pennies on the dollar for advertising online versus print. Does AMP offer a perhaps simpler and more generous way for publishers to make money online?
Well, we recognize certainly that when we look at the publishing ecosystem, that the paths to sustainability and profitability are many and varied, right? There is no singular model. Yes, we all believe that advertising can be a significant portion of revenue streams for publishers, but that too will vary product by product. We also know that paywalls will serve a part. There may be other means as well. So AMP is frankly neutral to that. I mean, on the one hand, yes, we want to do everything we can with the format to help the ads ecosystem be more compelling, healthier, more viable, a better mechanism to help sustain publishing efforts. But paywalls are indeed also a part of the ecosystem today, and very well may be an increasing part going forward. So already within AMP, there is support there today for connecting into your paywall system if you have one. It's a client-side solution today. We'll have support for a server-side solution fairly quickly down the road. But the capabilities are there now for both paywall support as well as ad support. And as the ecosystem evolves, we'll continue to make sure that AMP is there to make sure that any monetization approach that publishers want to use can be supported via AMP.
That's great. And that's pretty much the last of the questions from last Friday's Hangout. We had a few other questions from the comment threads. A lot of these we're going to actually respond to via comments in that comment thread afterwards. I know Richard's in a bit of a hurry to get out today. Thank you again for joining us for what time you did have today. I will just ask one or two quick questions before we let you go. Christina Oliveira, she threw this question out yesterday. She said, it's about AMP. Is there a technical requirement regarding where to host the AMP HTML version of a content piece? For example, does it need to be hosted in the same domain, same subdomain, or can it be hosted in a different subdomain altogether?
Good question. I don't have the precise technical answer for that as to whether it has to be in the same domain. I'll have to leave that to others. There is with AMP, we do ask publishers to use the rel equals tag to actually refer to the AMP file from the canonical article page and vice versa. Whether those URLs have to be in the same domain, however, is a question that I can't answer.
And we'll follow up with that. Two related questions, one of them about Node.js server-side environments and what impact Google AMP will have on companies that have moved their sites to that type of a format. And then another question that might be related, is there any news if and when AMP will be available for Joomla?
So regarding your server-side environment, there are no specific requirements or limitations in terms of what kind of server-side environment you have to support AMP. If you're able to publish HTML pages today, then you'll be able to publish AMP pages tomorrow. No restrictions in that regard at all. We use a lot of JS, frankly, in our own development with AMP, but none of this is a consequence in terms of your support for AMP. If you can publish and serve HTML files, you'll have no problem doing the same with AMP files. We are working with various, as I mentioned, third-party CMS providers like Drupal, like Joomla, and are making efforts to make sure support is available in those platforms as well. We'll have more to say specifically about the Joomla situation as we know more, similarly with Drupal as well. But there's a hard effort going on today to make sure that those are available to support AMP as soon as reasonably possible.
That's great. And one last question while I have you, Richard. Philip Smith asked yesterday, he suggested the idea of AMP hack days. Is that something that we might be interested in doing?
Yes, we love the idea of AMP hack days. There's been quite a bit of discussion here, and I suspect, I have no doubt that we'll be holding some and would encourage others to do that as well. I've already been approached by a number of different organizations who are interested in pulling people together to really do creative explorations for what AMP can be and do. So strongly encourage that. If you're thinking of doing one, reach out to us. We'd be pleased to do what we can to help. We'll be looking to mount them with third parties as well. All with that objective, as I said, and how do we make AMP the fully featured, fully flowered format that we know it can be. And frankly, having hack days so people can begin to further develop that and begin to showcase capabilities that aren't part of the format today that should be tomorrow would be a great step forward.
Perfect. There's a lot of other technical questions which we're not going to have time to get into today, but if people do have more technical questions, Richard, what's the best places for them to find that type of information?
I would definitely go to the ampproject.org site, as well as the GitHub project, the project on GitHub, which you can find links for on the AMP project site. Most of the information that you'll be looking for in various technical areas is there. And if not, there are folks available in the GitHub community who will respond to questions that you have. But just look forward to your getting engaged with the effort, engaged with the project, and look forward to seeing your AMP files out there on the web.
Thank you, Richard. And we look forward to seeing everybody else this coming Friday, 9 a.m. Pacific time. We're going to be doing a second AMP office hours. And for the next 4 weeks after that, we'll be doing additional AMP office hours every week. Continue to send us in your questions, either via the comment sections on the event pages or via Twitter. And if you have any additional questions during the live events, we'll be answering those as well. Richard, thank you again for joining us at the last minute here to follow up from our technical issue last week. And we'll see you soon.
Thanks a lot, Nick.
Take care.